All right, we can probably get started. So, my name is Ken Squires. We'll go through introductions here in a second, but today we're going to go through kind of designing a tabletop scenario. We have two different kind of formats that we go through. One, how you would do a tabletop exercise internally, and another, how you train your personnel on how to do a tabletop exercise. So, like I said, my name is Ken Squires. I am the partner of our cybersecurity practice at Sickage. A lot of the alphabet soup there. I do have a unique security background that I'd like to share with everyone because we are here kind of a lot of the pen testers, and there's a lot of people trying to get into the security industry. And one of the ways is, and don't sleep on it, is through third-party risk management and being a third-party assessor. I spent 10 years at Wells Fargo, Wachovia Wells Fargo, through those years of the bank mergers. And I did third-party risk management and third-party assessments and traveled the world. It's a great career choice if you want to get out there and see a bunch of different industries. You can imagine we had 1,400 different vendors that we would assess throughout the year, traveled all over the world, Philippines, India, Germany, Latin America, Canada, US, doing third-party assessments on all the TransUnions, Equifaxes of the world, right? Collection agencies. You get to see a lot. So I know we're here talking about pen testing and that, getting into security, but if you're getting into it or if you're retired and you want to travel, third-party risk management is kind of a unique way to get into the space, which kind of led to where I'm at now. Kind of looking at, some of the fun things. I guess I would consider myself a high-tech redneck. I will be that person that puts the 4-inch lift on the Cybertruck with the brush guard, probably a gun rack in the back. That'll be me traveling around here in Wisconsin. So getting to my colleague here, Thomas.
So sure. Again, a little bit of the alphabet soup there. I've had the pleasure of being involved with ISACA and ISC Squared as well as ISSA, and I do enjoy very much opportunities to provide public speaking and such. When you talk about redneck, I think I actually have it a little bit more honestly. I'm from a podunk little town in Alabama, so you will hear some of that as we go through this. I don't know why I'm still in Wisconsin, but here I am. It's definitely the weather. Actually, the reason is this next part here. I have 7 children in this area now, so I can't leave. Now I work remote, and it's like I could go anywhere, but all my grandbabies are up here. So I do enjoy dreaming about being a martial artist one day. I don't think it's ever going to happen, but I had the pleasure just recently of actually doing a bow staff seminar, and I could tell my kids on our family messenger chat that I'm working on my bow staff skills. They loved it.
So as we go through, we've been talking about breaches, and it's always been, not when, but, when's it going to happen? Now the new kind of breach notification requirements that are out there, it's not just about when's it going to happen to us, but when are we going to report them, right? It's going to happen to us, we know it, but what is our obligations on reporting breaches? And we really don't know that unless we go through kind of our tabletop exercise and have a good incident response plan. So the biggest ones that are out there right now requiring this is the SEC, GLBA, FERPA, FISMA, kind of looking at all your state breach notifications, the DFAR requirements, and the SOX. If you're not familiar with your breach notifications, you should have these, your reporting requirements within your incident response plan and what the SLAs are in reporting those breaches. A lot of these are within 72 hours to report the breach. The one thing is, not every incident is an incident. We go through a lot of events, okay? So it's important to know when it's an incident and when it's just an event. And kind of a sample that I always like to give is that if you get a phishing email, that's just an event. We have thousands of these things, maybe hundreds of thousands of events a day on our firewalls, on our threat monitoring systems, the vulnerabilities that we get sent through emails. And if you get a phishing email, that's just an event. If you click on it, it's still an event. If you fill out the form, it's still an event. If somebody uses the credentials from the form to gain access to your network, but they don't gain access, it's still an event. If they gain access, now you have a system breach, but is it a data breach? Do we report that? Further on through our investigation, if they use those credentials to get a hold of medical records or a database or something like that, it's still Now it's a data breach, but has that data been, has it left the network? Have they confiscated the data? Has it been sent out? Do we have to report this? Still continuing on to your investigation until you realize there has been a data leakage. Now it's time to report that there's been a data breach.
Who's actually going to make that determination for you? Legal.
Legal, exactly.
So
right?
it's not a data breach, and you don't use that term until legal says it is.
So it's super important. The reason why I bring this up, and we'll get to it later on, is that because if we use the word incident right off the beginning, now the chatter starts internally, right? Oh, we had an incident today, the network was down, right? And then your employees go on social media, your employees go out to maybe their other work or their second job. If you work at a hospital, maybe the providers or the doctors go to their other hospital and said, hey, we had an incident today, the network was down, I couldn't get to all my stuff. And then it gets out to the public in the PR statement. So it's super important during your communication to not use data breach, incidents until you kind of know that and you report that and you make the decision to make that communication. Internally, you got to make sure you're protecting your communication as you work through these things.
So real quickly, as an audience here, how many of you are dealing with any kind of compliance concern like we have on the board here? All right. I think you all could put your hands up because one of them on there is state. And if you have any PII or anything like that that happens to get hit in a data breach, you're under a compliance law. So the reality is everybody in here should have their hands up for that, okay? This is a concern for everyone. And again, as you do your incident response plan, you have to think about that. It needs to be in your incident response plan. And then you need to test your team to make sure they actually gain access to the plan at the right time, that they know how to handle that.
I think one of the big things with the SEC right there is material impact. That's very challenging for a lot of clients to come up with what's material to them. And there are methodologies to come up with what's material. One thing you want to do is figure out what's material for you before you have an incident. A lot of the ways that you do that is through having a risk register and developing your risk criteria and determining what's a material impact that could be a potential risk, that could be a potential requirement for us to report if there was an incident or a breach on that specific asset or that type of data. We already know that we define what's material to us in our risk criteria. So if you haven't done that, that's another item that you want to kind of, now that this is hitting all the publicly traded companies, finding out what's material for you is super important, and it's something that we could help out with. It's a good.
Yeah, we would encourage you to get a subject matter expert to assist you in that.
All right, we look through, not only do the regulations require it, but all the different frameworks, right? NIST 800-171, ISO 800-53, CIS controls. Everybody wants you to have an incident response process, plan, and is it tested? All right, it's in all the regulations and it's all the security frameworks. So what's the best way to kind of come up with your scenarios for a tabletop exercise? Kind of what I allude to, right? If you have a risk register, use a real-world scenario for your organization. Go through your risk register, pick out a risk that you've already identified, and use that as your scenario. That'll also help you do the threat analysis and the threat modeling for that risk. Do we have mitigating controls in place? Do we have the right safeguards? Or do we have the right threat monitoring in place to prevent this risk? Use real-world scenarios that are specific for your industry and your company. And if you've done a risk assessment or a pen test, you can use those as scenarios. That's the best way to do it. Earlier there was a lot of, as we go through a lot of these talks today, this has been a big thing. Incidents are not an IT thing. Incidents are an organization-wide problem. And everybody, all key stakeholders should be part of the tabletop exercise. So don't just silo it and do it as an IT project. Make sure you involve all of the enterprise. The other thing too is you're going through, making it open communication, right? We're not pointing fingers and we're not doing gotchas at everybody. If we don't have the right threat modeling or threat monitoring solution in place, that's just a process improvement. We're going to come out of it, right? We don't point fingers and say, why didn't we have that in place? Why didn't this happen, right? Because maybe it was budgeting and it was put up there, but we didn't get the budget for it. And that's a management decision for that. So open communication is super important. So when we have all the key stakeholders in the room, It should be an open dialogue as we go through.
So I know this happens at places where IT will get together and use like, the card games that give you a chance to pull together kind of a chain of attack. And then you can say, okay, as a team, how would we respond to that? You're looking at it strictly from the IT side. The problem is that when you do a tabletop exercise that has like the chief financial officer or the chief operating officer, or you have HR there, and they're sitting at the table with you, and you say, we're going to shut the network down. That's how we would respond to that. And your chief operating officer says, wait a minute, that's going to impact all of our SLAs. Or, I love this, we'll do tabletop simulations where we invite people from multiple different industries, and we'll have a healthcare industry sitting at the table with a manufacturing, sitting with an architectural design firm, and it's really fun. What'll happen is we'll say, now what would you do with this particular scenario? And again, the manufacturing's like, we'd shut it down. And the healthcare worker is like, wait a minute, what about the guy in the operating room right now? It really is a life and death situation. So it's a great opportunity to think through, how does this impact the business strategies, right? The organization. So really getting everybody at the table and making sure that you're not just doing isolated scenarios is very important.
We want to make sure that we track and identify any process improvements, right, to our incident response process and plan. That's super important. Out of the tabletop exercise, you should have a plan of actions to remediate anything that you came out of the tabletop exercise and document those findings and those decisions that were made, right? One of the biggest things is using the MITRE ATT&CK framework. This is a great framework to kind of go through, and if you can follow through the framework and build your tabletop exercise off of that, it hits kind of all areas of the MITRE ATT&CK framework of an attack.
So let's get real practical with that one for just a minute. How many of you have been to the MITRE ATT&CK framework website? Oh, good. Man, that's excellent. Okay, so one of the things I really enjoy doing, especially with clients in the room, is to sit down, go to the MITRE ATT&CK framework, type in their industry in the search bar, and immediately it pops up a listing of threat actors who specifically have targeted their industry. Then we can pick one of those threat actors, somebody specifically who maybe has been in the news recently, and we can look at the specific tactics, techniques, and procedures that that threat actor has used. Now we can begin to identify specific threats that their industry is facing, and that gives you a chance to really pick a good scenario. And every year, even 6 months, you can go back and look at it again to see, because they're updating it on a regular basis. It's an easy way for you to keep your tabletop exercises fresh, okay? So that's a really practical tip for you.
This first format is how we custom design tabletop exercises for clients. So this is if you were going to design a tabletop exercise and give that, that format out. So we would go through introductions, but we're going to skip kind of over that. We go through the objectives. One of the biggest things about doing the tabletop exercise is to ensure that we can limit the exposure of the incident, right? We want to limit that impact, limit the fallout of the incident, contain the situation, and be aware, are there any regulatory or compliance requirements we have that we have to report this incident, right? So these are some of the main objectives as you go through a tabletop exercise that you want to capture as you're giving that scenario out. Are we containing it? Are we limiting the exposure of this situation? Are we meeting all of our compliance requirements and our regulatory requirements? Big thing is, have we looked through our contractual obligations and even know from a client base? Who are our clients and our partners, and what are their SLAs for us reporting? We kind of know, like we said, the SEC and the DOD and those ones, but what about the Bank of Americas of the world or anybody else that we're supporting? What's our requirements to them, and what kind of legal liabilities could we put in place if we have their data breach, right? So that's one of the big things that comes out of these tabletop exercises. It's not just about regulatory compliance, but also our obligations to our partners. So you want to make sure you're tracking those as well. One of the biggest things, and I've done a lot of tabletop exercises for clients as a VC, and every single time I do it, they want to fight the scenario. Don't fight the scenario. Don't get hung up on something that, yes, we have, a WAF in place, or we have a firewall. It's going to, and it's going to block this, and so this incident will never happen to us.
How many of you have had that happen? You've been in a tabletop exercise, and it's like, this would never happen. Like, I'll tell you this. If you design a tabletop scenario and they go, oh, that could really happen, that's a problem. That means you already know you have a gap in your system. and you need to go address it. That's a finding right there, right? So most tabletop exercises really are something you expect would not happen. That's why we have what we call 0 days, right? We didn't expect it.
And there's always takeaways. You're never going to have all the details, right? So that's what the follow-ups are. That's why you want to document those, because there's always going to be takeaways. Hey, I've got to follow up on that if we actually have that in place. Track those down, and then add those to your next kind of scenario as you go through. So the format that we use is we give an injection, and then we go through that scenario and get feedback on how the client, so as you're giving the scenario out there, go ahead and give it out and then let the feedback come in, right? Let them discuss it internally. Don't lead them on, let them kind of work it out until you get halfway through the conversation and then start asking questions. So
Yeah, exactly.
what's some of the things that you would ask for when you go through there?
So quite often what we'll do is we'll have it inject, and we try to make it realistic and a little bit fun. We'll put some kind of a element of surprise to it, as to how it occurs. But in the process of that, we'll ask them, say, okay, now what would you do? And we just go silent. Not like me hitting this microphone and stuff, but we'll go silent and just stare at them and let the silence kind of get awkward, right? And just let them talk. And some of the things I'm looking for that I'm not going to prompt them on, but I'm looking for is did they pull out their instant response plan? Sometimes I am 4 or 5 steps into this particular scenario before they have pulled out their instant response plan, and it says at the top, determine triage if this is an incident, if this is an event, and determine what level of concern it is, right? They haven't even done that yet. They're immediately trying to figure out what they need to do. The problem is they know it's a tabletop exercise, and so they're immediately thinking this is going to be a big issue, right? And so they're just jumping over the steps. And we give them a chance to just kind of walk through that. Again, it's not gotchas, it's practice. It's allow them to fail, think through what they should do better. At the end of that, we'll start asking questions like, hey, are there any specific things that you should have addressed here? What are the big things you're looking for at this point? And they're going to tell me, well, we're looking to see if, what the metrics are on it. How many failed logins have there been? So then my next question to them is, how would you know that? And I leave it there. And they start looking at each other. Can we get the logs from such and such? And then I might even, if we have the time, ask them, can you go get those logs? Like, how would you get those logs right now? And I let them say, well, we would go do such and such. Okay, how far back do those logs go? They go until it flips over based off the size of the file. Okay, well, how long does that usually go? I don't know. Okay, go take a look at your log and see how much time is in it right now. It's like 12 hours. Okay, so this thing that happened last night, you probably don't have logs on. You know what I'm saying? But you actually have to ask those questions. Why?
Yep, provoke good interactions, good questions, and just carry on that conversations. If you're an auditor, that's good skill sets, right? Because you keep on going down that rabbit hole and let them, hang themselves.
Except they're not, right? Again, we're not looking. I mean, that is something that we have to be careful of, that we're not ridiculing each other. The reality is if you were to do it to me, I would make the exact same mistakes. I just have the pleasure of being the facilitator of them hanging themselves.
Here we go. So who should all be there? It's very important, right? We said who's going to be in that room. As we look at it, if you can, these are the main players. Now, it's hard to get everybody in that room. When we do our tabletop lunch and learns, we always like to have these subject matter experts throughout the room, and we'll call on them on how they will handle certain situations. It's good training when we do those lunch and learns. But you want to try to have your outside counsel, whoever that is, executive operations. So operations is super important. Those department managers, they're going to know what SLAs they have, what uptimes. You'd be surprised of whether it's under the manager of underwriting or certain CAD design. They're going to know, hey, we can't be down for 4 hours. We have to process this many applications within 4 hours, so you can't turn down the system. So they're going to know the operations and what our contractual obligations are to our clients, and that's super important to have in that room because, again, from an IT standpoint, the first thing is just kind of turn it off, unplug it. You need to know what the business operations are if you don't know. If you can, have your cyber insurance partner there. Law enforcement's super important. Thomas, you can kind of speak on this with law enforcement. Last lunch and learn we had, InfraGard was there, and that was super important for the crowd to kind of hear from InfraGard, the partnership with the FBI and everything that's going on.
You guys familiar with InfraGard? Okay, good. It seems like there's a lot of people here who are related to incident response. I mean, you guys are yes to everything I ask, so pretty awesome. InfraGard's great. I am a member of InfraGard. I've had the opportunity to speak for the Milwaukee SuperCon several times. Being able to know your FBI local contact, or in some cases it could be your local consortium, right? So like up here we have WICTRA and you have CISA, and there's other groups like that having those relationships before the incident occurs is super important. Even knowing your local police, just your local law enforcement, because you could be dealing with like a physical attack, a physical pen test of sorts, right? So there's all kinds of ways this could occur. What we found is that at times the FBI, I mean, just think recently, what was the big takedown that just recently occurred with the FBI? Right? Come on, guys. Lockbit, right? So Lockbit was just taken down. And then when they took it down, they turned around and put up a fake site where they were actually ridiculing Lockbit, where they were showing how many of the decryptors they were able to take, how many sites had been cleaned, how, all these things that they had done to fix what Lockbit had done. FBI was able to pull all those decryptors and actually use those to correct a lot of ransomware attacks at that time. Pretty sweet. Just a few years back here in the Wisconsin area, one of the manufacturers up north of us was able to actually, they contacted the FBI, and they had a decryptor already on hand and was able to get them out of a ransomware attack pretty quick there. So it can happen. I'm not going to promise you it will always happen. Sometimes you'll talk to the FBI and you just don't get the results you're looking for. A couple of things you need to think of. If you do contact FBI or other law enforcement, they may ask you, are you sure you want to do this right now? Because if you do, they're going to have to come in, and when they do, they're quite often going to take over control of what's happening. And so now you are going to have more publicity. You very well could have to declare it as a breach, and now your time starts ticking for insurance notifications and other things like that. So make sure you've talked to legal and you've thought it through, but all the more reason to have them involved in your tabletop so you can begin to get a familiarity of when should we be bringing them in. What part of it?
Another big thing is, obviously, if you outsource your IT, you want to have your MSP
Absolutely.
there and your MSSP, right? And any of your consultants, maybe from an incident response standpoint, you partner with the SICAGE to handle forensics, and you have a retainer already set up. You want to have them there, right? And then PR and public relations, we're not always the experts. We're not going to be in ChatGPT creating our own PR statements for our incident. Have an expert there, because we don't want to.
We will regret it.
Exactly. All right, so let's go into it. So let's begin.
All right, here we go. 8 o'clock in the morning, Monday. We have an alert coming in. What is IT going to tell us? All right, so this would be the type of a test where we've customized it. We've interviewed our client. We kind of have found out what types of tools are you using, what's your ERP system, how's your network set up, is it cloud-based, is it on-prem? We kind of walked through all those things, and we've designed a specific test directly for them. So the IT department says, we have a serious problem. The IT director says, what now?
That usually sounds like a Monday morning. What now?
Yeah, probably right after Thanksgiving or... Okay, so internal IT comes in, and we have calls about encrypted files and applications offline. Employees are calling the help desk saying they can't access their UKG human resource app and the Autodesk applications. Some are also reporting that receiving your files have been encrypted notices when trying to access documents on the file share. So the next slide will show you kind of what that looks like. Here we have extensions that are encrypted on the slide, and then you'll also see that one of the README files or the text files actually says that your files have been encrypted and here's what you need to do about it.
Hopefully you haven't seen one of these files on your systems, but it's pretty scary when you see, because what do you know at that point?
What do you know at this point if you see this? Okay, it might be ransomware. Do you know that for sure? Why don't you know it for sure? I have actually known of cases where they encrypted the files with just an MD5 hash, and it could be reversed. I've known of others where maybe it was just PK zip or something, PK Ware's here, right? So maybe it was just encrypted it's not really encrypted, and it's a false alarm, right? So you do need to actually determine if it's real or not, but what do you know for sure? They are definitely in your network. Somebody has changed things in your network. Now, it could be an insider, but somebody is in your network. There's a threat actor in your network. So we're letting them talk for just a good bit. Some of the things we just did with you, we would let them talk about it. Say, what are you going to do here? And they'll start brainstorming. Some of them will say things like, well, we don't know if it's real or not. Okay, good. That's a great point. How would you determine if it's real or not? Okay, so then now they're going to say, well, we're going to get out on the internet and try to profile this to see if we can tell who the attacker might be, if we can determine if it's actually real or not, right? After it's over, we debrief them. We'll start things like, what questions did you determine needed to be answered? And get them to actually document that, right? What questions did you need to answer at this step? What initial containment steps should you be taking at this point? Should we lock off that server? Should we turn off the file shares? Should we disable all internet connections to everything? What should we be doing at this point? And then I ask them, what impacts has this caused to your business strategies? And again, this is where you can't really do that if you're isolated in a silo with just your IT team. You have to have the rest of the business partners there to find out what impact did this cause.
All right, so and then we move on to the next one. We kind of look at as we play through the day here. It's 10 o'clock.
All right, initial information is coming back from IT. They've done their research. So what are they finding out? Initial results coming back from IT say that the logistics ERP, the application is stopped, and the application and database files are all encrypted. All sensitive data outside of backslash Windows and program files on each domain controller is encrypted. Attempts to RDP into the domain controllers fail with a corrupt or missing profile error message. I have seen this before. This usually means that your domain controller is encrypted. Event logs show unusual administrator logins from a procurement employee's PC. All right, what are you going to do with that? So let's just take a minute. How many of you are in manufacturing? Okay, so this might be a little bit related to you. We got some AutoCAD, we got some ERP. How many of you are involved in financial? All right, okay, a few of you, this might not be as relevant, but maybe the ERP would or the UKG. Okay, so as you think about that, what would you do at this point? What's that? Okay, so you're going to try to identify the procurement PC. What would you do with it? Okay, so you're going to isolate it. So now we're stepping into containment. Okay, what else might you do? I thought we had some good IR people in here. What? How are you going to look for more? So what are you going to do with those logs? Okay, so you're going to pull out indicators of compromise. So now we start to identify the indicators of compromise, and we're going to list those out. So do you really have, what's that?
You have those with your IOCs. That's all you know for an IOC.
But if you take that procurement PC, can you start to look for IOCs on it? You see what I'm saying? So we might image that procurement PC. How many of you would just turn the thing off? Okay, good. I see a lot of shaking heads. I wouldn't turn it off. I would isolate it. I would probably then seek to try to take an image of it, right? And now once I have that, I'm going to use a safe image to start looking for indicators of compromise. If I can find indicators of compromise, and now every time that the IT team or whoever is talking is telling me this, I'm asking, can you actually do that? How would you do that? Tell me what tool you have in your department to do that. We don't have a tool. Okay, all right. Well, that's good to know, isn't it? But you're determining that that's something you should do, so therefore we need to start thinking about what tool you're going to use for that. So we're asking them to actually prove, not just give me high-level thoughts about this is what we would do, how would you do it, all right? And if they get the indicators of compromise, what would you do with those? And so then they start saying, well, CrowdStrike has this way for us to plug it, or SentinelOne, I can throw in this hash value of a certain file, and I can do a search across the whole network for any other PCs that might have that hash value. Okay, good. That's a real thing you could do. Have you ever done it? No, we haven't ever done it. Okay, can you show me real quick in SentinelOne where you would do that? And they have to see, and I start asking them, how long is it taking you to do this? So now we're looking at impact, right? How long is it taking you to do it, and how much more damage could be happening to the network while you're doing that? All of those things are things we want to think about, not just quickly go, we would do this step, this step, this step, this step. I want to know what's the impact, okay?
Perfect. So these are some of the questions you might want to ask as we went through. So Thomas already went through some of those, but you want to make sure that we're asking the questions, what are the important systems, what's the data that needs to be collected, the logs that we talked about, how are we containing the incident, are we taking the laptop off, what's going to be our action items for containing the incident, and then again, what's the impacts. Now we're going to switch it up a little bit on if you were to train your team on giving, kind of like what we're doing today, an incident response exercise.
Now these are really fun. So with these, our goal isn't so much to identify gaps as much as it is to let the team have discussion times and talk through things. So let's go ahead and take the next step here. So we got this contact from the attacker coming in. He says, and I can't see it. We have locked your data. Send 25 Bitcoin to this wallet number, and we will return your data and delete the data in our possession. Do this by 24 hours, or we will post your data to the internet. Okay, that's a pretty realistic message. Keep going there.
Oh, great.
And our power just went out. No, I don't have power for this, and it turns out we don't have the power adapter here. Anybody got a Dell power adapter? We could throw it on there real quick. USB-C power adapter is all I need.
Way to go, Thomas. Way to be prepared.
I obviously did not have an instant response plan for this.
We assessed the incident.
Listen.
The other piece of it.
No, you got it right there. Now, if my PC gets fried right here, I get to sue you. Blood from a turnip. We just isolated this computer. Is this working? How long does it take for it to get enough juice to start?
Oh, it should be all right.
I'll tell you what, it looks like it should be good. 65 watt? Actually, maybe it is too small.
We were going to bring puppets, we forgot. That's what we told them in the back, that we had puppets.
See if we can increase the power. Well, we have a great set of slides we can give you later.
We can go through it. So, one of the biggest things, when that comes in, when you're getting attacked there and you see a message coming in from the attacker, what would you do at that point? When the attacker comes in, would you communicate with the attacker?
So at this point, if we were doing this as a training exercise, the way we do these next slides is we have an option A and an option B. Option A, David just got to see this recently. Option A will have like maybe $1 sign by it. Option B will have like $2 or $3 signs. That's to indicate that if you choose option B, it's going to cost the company more money. If you choose option A, it costs a little less. Option A will have like 4 or 5 things to it, like don't contact the attacker, contact FBI. Oh, it's coming up. Six-digit code, everybody just noticed.
They can't see it.
Oh, you can. Oh, okay, good. Never mind.
See,
We don't know how long that code was.
It's secured. So you can see we use encryption at Sickage.
Yeah, so option A will have these 4 or 5 options. One of the things that we do on purpose, though, and I wish I could show you, we'll show you maybe here in a minute, is you'll look at A that are missing. Let's look at B. Well, B has several things on it, and you start looking at it and you go, I don't actually like option B either. I think I need an option C. Let's take parts of A and parts of B and put them together and make an option C. And I'm very clear with the teams when we do that. There is no option C. You cannot choose option C. You have to choose option A or B. Why do I do that? This is a question for the audience.
Make it more difficult.
Nope, I don't like to just make it difficult. Okay, so you're going Kobayashi Maru, right, or something?
Well, as hackers, we try to think outside the box. And I'm assuming in this scenario, you don't want people necessarily thinking outside the box. You want to do that during the scenario so that when the real thing comes, you're not just winging it.
There's a lot of truth to that, buddy. So that's part of it, but that's not it either. Anybody else want to help out? What do you think? Yes, ma'am. Say that again.
There you go.
That's definitely some truth too. Here's the yeah.
What option was your IR plan?
That may or may not be true either, right? Here's the reason we do it. So for training purposes, I'm not as concerned as if they're following their IR plan. I'm more concerned with getting the teams talking about all the different options. And I make them purposefully bad or somewhat bad so that they will talk to each other. Because somebody's going to read a portion of it and they're going to really identify with the good thing they see in option A and they're going to say, we should do option A. And somebody else is going to go, wait. If we do that, it's going to do this. I really like this thing over in option B. Well, why do you like that so much more? And then in some scenarios, they are mutually exclusive. You can't do both. You're going to have to pick one or the other. So it allows you to really create that conversation, get your team thinking. And what happens a lot of times in an incident, what happens? Your freeze, flight, panic, those things happen, right? So some of your team is going to be like, we got to do poof, and they're hitting things left and right, jerking cords out. Other people on your team are just like, whatever he wants to do. I'm scared to do anything, right? By doing this and having them talk among their team, you start to get that stuff out of the system. And they get to know each other and how each other would respond, and you start to build that unity, right? So it becomes a really good team exercise. So that's a lot of the reasons we do the training this way.
So here we are, the attacker made first contact.
Oh, you want me to do it? The attacker has made contact, claiming to have access to your data and demanding payment. Preliminary research points to an attacker that seems to make good on their threats. All right. The attacker has given strict instruction to not contact the FBI. The attacker claims they will post your data if you fail to pay. So here is options A and B. Option A, $1 run an external vulnerability scan, reassess the number of infected machines, don't respond to the attacker, and do contact law enforcement. Option B, keep scrubbing malware and viruses, try making firewall changes to segment the network to stop lateral movement. Is that a good option? I would say yes, making changes to your firewall is a good option. Attempting to decrypt files. I would probably have somebody on my team see if they could possibly do that. Attempt to open a dialogue with the attacker, and don't contact law enforcement. All right. You would go with B?
Yeah, I would.
You would? Why?
Well, so you have to talk to the attacker to prove the threat. Because if they say that they have all these files and they might post them, you have to tell them to shut up. Because if they just said they took a bunch of files, then there's a file tree,
We'll go to B.
it doesn't actually prove that they have your files. So you need to get from them proof, A, that they have your files, and B, that they can actually decrypt it if you pay them.
Okay, good. So one of the things I like to do when I'm running a tabletop is facilitate arguments. It's a whole lot of fun. But again, it's to create that training. So anybody disagree with him?
Yes.
Okay, I got some disagreements. Were you disagreeing? Because you had your hand up first.
I have a question. Have we contacted insurance yet?
So if we were running the long one, I would be asking them, have they done that, and letting them decide that. So it depends on your incident response plan. Would you have contacted them by now?
Oh, absolutely. And I just know that the insurance companies have people that specifically deal with contacting the attacker.
Do all insurance companies have negotiators for you? No, not all of them. It depends on your policy. How many of you are very intimate with your policy? One guy. Okay, I got one hand that's intimate with the policy. Tell me about your policy a little bit. Do you mind?
Well, we're consultants, so we deal with a lot, but a lot of our clients do have.
So how big is a typical policy? Huh? How much? Give me an example one. Just pick one. What's that? $2 million. Okay, so we got a $2 million policy. Can you spend the whole $2 million on anything you want in order to fix this IR? No, you can't. What can you do? It depends on the policy. And in the policy, it will have limits. This much money can be spent for breach notification. This much money can be spent for an IR, forensic investigator. This much money can be spent for such and such. If you have not looked at that, you may think I have a $500,000 or I have $1 million or I have a $2 million policy. The reality is you may only have a $10,000 policy to do a forensic investigation. Does that make sense?
So it's important to know your policy, right?
And they may tell you who has to do it. You can pre-negotiate. We actually have a client who's doing this right now. They're pre-negotiating with Travelers Insurance to have our team be the preferred incident response because we know their network, we know their systems, we do their tabletops, so we're ideal to be the ones to handle it in that situation. You can do that, but you have to do it before the incident. If you do it during the incident, they're going to say no, it has to be theirs. The other thing that happens is most of them do have negotiators. And I would not personally contact the attacker, because if you say something wrong, you can really stir him up. The negotiators are very good at saying, well, we need to verify certain things, like you were saying. They're going to do those things, and they can end up drawing out plenty of time for you to get, verifications on your side, for you to do other things. And quite often, they can negotiate it down to something that they can handle. However, if your policy happened to be on the share drive that they happen to have access to, they will also know exactly how much you can pay in the midst of a ransomware.
All right, so what did we decide on as a group here?
Did we say A or B? How many of you are for A? How many of you are for B? Oh, come on. All right. He said B. We're going to go with B.
All right, so you can imagine when we do the lunch and learns and we actually have this format, our PowerPoint presentation is 3,500 slides as you kind of go through. So it's actually pretty fun. If you guys do see one of our lunch and learns out there, come by, get lunch on us, and go through our exercise.
Lunches are good. Let's keep moving. We're going to move on because we want to get to the third one here.
All right, so as you go through, you can kind of see, we want to move on, but the first two choices there for B were in the green, those were good. The third, the bottom three were not so good, probably wouldn't want to do those. We want to contact law enforcement, like we said, InfraGard and that, and we don't want to really talk to the attacker directly. Option A would have been probably a better choice, but still, running the scan could have took a long time to do, and it would have took more time to do the investigation.
Probably would have.
Probably would have.
All right, so we hit 12:15. We're going to keep moving here. Let's just move on through.
We got time.
Oh, we do?
43.
Okay, I'm sorry. So our level now is elevated. We're going to have information coming back from public relations now. And the PR team comes in and says this: we have had contact. We're receiving calls from reporters from the major news outlets. They want to know how long we have known about our breach and what we should do. Okay, so let me ask you, what's a couple of things you see right away with that statement? This would be the interactive part. How did they find out? How about how they phrased it? Did they phrase it in such a way that it might be a problem? Huh? They said the B word.
Exactly.
And if they say the B word and you say, oh, it's been so long, you've just confirmed, right? So should you respond to them? Should you not respond to them? You should control them. Okay, let's see what our options are. We got an A and a B here. So option A, oh, you know what? Both of these are just $1 bill. So respond to the reporters. Use only the instant response pre-drafted talking points. Coordinate internal messaging to corporate and plant level employees. Option B, do not respond to reporters. Buy some time to craft specific responses to their questions. Signal to plant that corporate is aware of a minor incident and require that all media inquiries be sent to the corporate PR team. Which one would you go with?
That's kind of tough, because you have to kind of mix and match.
You can't have a C.
Can't have a C.
Yeah, no C's.
Is the PR,
You're going A 100%.
is the PR team on A?
No, you've already pre-drafted those for your IR plan. Now, that may have been PR. Did you get PR to help you draft a response for a ransomware attack?
Or co-pilot.
The answer is yes. Let me ask you, how many of you already have pre-drafted responses for ransomware? How many of you have a pre-drafted response for business email compromise? How many of you have a pre-drafted response for what's another common threat? What's that? A lost laptop.
laptop.
Okay. We could keep going. This is where we talked about if you say on MITRE ATT&CK framework, here's our industry, here's the common threat actors, here's the common TTPs, we can come from that and say, here are common threats to my industry. Once you know what those are, you should take that list and immediately have your PR team start drafting specific responses for each of those threats. Does that make sense? You already know they're threats to your industry, so you should have a PR response for that before you get to this point. Would you agree?
And if you don't, that's a process improvement that you document, right, out of the tabletop exercise. Here's an action item that we work on. So what did we decide on this one? Somebody said 100% A? All right, let's click on that and see where it goes.
Yay.
All right.
We got a lot of greens.
There you go, good one.
All right, let's don't talk through those. Let's just keep moving. But you get the idea. You could develop your own tabletops the same way.
B, not as good.
B, not as good. All right, so we got to be continued here. So we would take this further and have more interaction with the attacker, have more interaction with your team. Let me ask you this. Is it realistic that the news media outlets would get wind that something was going on by afternoon? Why would that happen? What? Insider threat could be. Could it just be an accident? How would it happen as an accident?
If you're a healthcare plan and your MyChart portal is down, then that won't get on the news very quick.
How many of you saw the Reddit for Quick Trip? Yeah. So Quick Trip employees posted on Reddit all about the security event they were having with their rewards program a few months back when that was down. And everybody in this area knows if you went to Quick Trip, you couldn't do your rewards, right? The point of sale system didn't work right. It was because of that. And if you wanted to know why, you could go on Reddit and the employees were all talking about it. I know of some of the credit unions in the areas. They'll have people who travel from they have 4 hours at one location, branch, where they meet loan officers maybe, and then they have 4 hours at another branch. And so if they got wind of something at one branch, that communication travels with them to the next branch. Or a doctor who's traveling between urgent care centers and so on. Does that make sense? Word spreads. It just travels, and you can't predict all of that. So you need to be ready for it ahead of time.
Lastly, as you go through, you want to do a debriefing, right? What was the positive things? What was the negative things? What's our process improvements? Where's our plan of actions? Make sure you go through kind of each one of the injections that you had and capture those notes and give that kind of debriefing of what went well and any additional.
It's really valuable to have a subject matter expert assist you in that debrief because they'll ask questions and they'll identify things that you might not notice because you're too close to it. How many of you have done a report like in school or something, it looked perfect, as soon as you hand it to somebody else, they see everything in it, all these issues. That's just who we are. Like we just can't see our own failures and our own mistakes. And so having a subject matter expert would be really helpful.
So with the theme of the con, we put together a AI tabletop simulator within ChatGPT. We did make a GTP if you guys want to get the link for that. But this is the prompt that you could use for that. This is a D&D choose your own adventure. You could look at firewall logs, use forensics tools and everything with it. On the page, it's a very long prompt to put in, but it's a fun choose your own adventure, set up your own industry, your own type of scenario, and roll through that within the theme of this kind of in the CypherCon.
Let me ask you this. Is the QR code working right now with that black line through it? Bummer. Okay.
I could do this, though.
What's that? Oh, do it. Can you drag it to the other screen or something? Look at that. Now you're talking. Now all the cameras go up. Now that actually is a red teamer QR code, and we just actually took over all your phones.
There's been lots of QR codes in this conference for a hackathon.
If you're willing to use the Wi-Fi, you might as well scan our QR code.
You could also search Sickage IR simulation.
Yeah, so this is actually a great tool for your team to just play with and kind of get ideas. You can use it also to kind of come up with some ideas of what you might do for a tabletop. But highly recommend that you actually set up a real tabletop with your team, okay, with all the correct business stakeholders. We got about, what do we got, 5-10 minutes here? Anybody got any questions at this point? Yeah.
So with the people you want to enroll, you want to manage IT service provider. Have you had to do a scenario that basically you don't want to know this until the scenario that it's the MSP that is the one that's caused the
You know, I haven't done that. You know, you think of Coursera and some of those kind of events like that, like that's a very real scenario. I haven't done it so far. I don't always know if the MSP is going to be there. I do let the client make that call. But I know we're going to be doing one for a large financial institution here in the area in the next month or so. And literally the legal firm is going to run this tabletop. And they want us there as the IR. They want the MSP there. They're bringing in like 4 or 5 other outside. They're doing it right. And I'm thinking, man, this is fantastic. Like when they get done, the results of that are going to be really good. So you don't have any one, like just imagine for a minute that we were the MSP and we're the IR and we're doing, you know, the tabletop exercise. You know what I mean? It's pretty easy to have the fox guarding the hen house and missing their own failures in that process. So this is really sweet.
I think it's important to have those experts there to help you through this too. You know, obviously we do this as a service, but we see a lot of different industries, like I said, about third-party risk management and being out there and seeing what's in the world. And having that expert or your partner there through these tabletop exercises is one of those pro tips.
I think we have another question here.
Yeah, what percentage of your business is weekly scheduled individual tabletops opposed to regularly scheduled, perhaps like alongside incident response review? How much of your business is one versus the other?
So for us, when we set up an incident response retainer, we actually do an incident response review. We have a whole, we basically call it our incident response kickstart. And with that program, we're able to pull in all the information that the client has, analyze it for gaps, give them recommendations right up front, and get those things in place. Then we'll do a practice run, but not a true tabletop. A true tabletop is a little bit more, it's harder to do in a short period like that, and so it has greater costs involved. So we have to bring in the right subject matter experts and do that a little bit more appropriately.
And usually you're doing one at least annually.
We recommend you do it at least annually.
Yeah, so a lot of the compliance programs, whether they're the new CMMC, NIST, whatever you guys are running from a compliance program, you want to make sure that you're updating your plan annually and doing a annual, if not quarterly or biannual tabletop exercise.
All right, let's keep going here with these tips, and then we'll talk about some key takeaways you can do today.
Gathering metrics, you know, looking through, you know, what are the SLAs, what are our downtimes that we could have. This is a good time, like I said, when you have those business owners in the room, what would be the impact to contracts? What would be the financial loss if we weren't able to provide goods? These are the type of metrics you want to gather as you're doing your tabletop exercise, so you can kind of develop that, what I said was a material breach, a material impact, right? These are times to play through those scenarios when you're doing your threat modeling sessions during these conversations.
We highly encourage you to think about your retention policy. I've done several tabletops where I'm talking to the client about a specific thing, and they're like, well, that wouldn't happen. We moved all that data to such and such in the cloud. I said, great, where did you move it from? Oh, we moved it from this other server. Is that server still on your network? It sure is. Okay, have you deleted the data off it? No, we haven't done that yet. So, okay, so you got the data in 2 places, and your retention policy is no longer covering that other one. Nope. Okay, there's a gap, right? So to bring in your retention policy and literally think through, where is the data? Has the data been removed according to how it should? Is it located in the right place? That's very important.
Making sure you got a good feedback loop, right? Like I said, open conversation. We're not pointing fingers. We're not creating fear in the room. It is, you know, when we are security analysts or network engineers or network analysts and your boss is in the room, right? Or the CEO or the president or the head of a certain department, creating that environment when you're given these scenarios to make it comfortable that you can be open and honest, right? Making sure that we're documenting everything that comes out of it. Having a good note taker, just somebody taking notes during the incident response tabletop exercise is important, right?
That's going to help you when you start to add it back into your risk register. It's going to help you when you have to deal with your auditors. It's going to help you to have that.
And your company changes, the organization changes, new environments change, so revisit the IR plan. You know, like I said, if it's not on a quarterly basis, at least annually. And that's what auditors want to see. That's what compliance regulations want to know, and test it out. You know, this isn't a one-time thing. This is a process improvement. This should be part of your plan, do, check, act, right? Your kind of ISO processes internally. So that's really it. I hope you guys enjoyed
we do have one more slide. So, and in that rotating roles, I do like to say sometimes it's fun to kill somebody off. Like you literally get to kill somebody off, and now you have to figure out what you're going to do without that guy. Somebody else, he's on vacation in Hawaii, doesn't have his phone with him. I literally had an instant response call come on, and the primary person to make decisions was in Island, and we had to wait till a certain time frame when they were going to check in to be able to get responses from
That's
them.
usually the one that
Huge.
answers everything when you ask a question. They're the
Huge
ones that are
issue.
answering.
Yep.
They're immediately off the boat.
So some of the things you can do today in the next 90 days, go ahead and build those relationships. Make that list like we talked about of the business partners that should be a part of this. Make sure that you've got HR, and find out when can you schedule the next one to get them there. Think about your law enforcement connections. Think about your PR, your outside legal. Review your insurance policy like we talked about. Figure out what those limits are. Make sure you know, and make sure that that policy is not in a place that if you were attacked, the attacker would be able to see it. Pre-configure your firewall rules. This is a great one. This is a pro tip, guys. I'm talking to them, and they're like, we would shut off the egress and ingress access. Okay, how would you do that? We would take and go through and change the rules. Okay, but you still have Sentinel-1 or CrowdStrike that has external SOC access, right? Yes, well, we need to keep that. Okay, so you need to shut everything down but keep that open. Do you know what those rules are? No. How long will it take you to get those rules in place? And they start thinking it through. It's going to take them about 4 or 5 hours. Why don't you go ahead and figure that out now and create a template that you can just apply during the midst of that IR? Do that today. You have a chance to do that right now. And then identify the threats to your industry like we pointed out several times. Go to MITRE ATT&CK. Go to the Verizon data breach. Go to Talos data breach. Go to the API sec security update to look at what is hitting APIs. Okay? Thank you all for the opportunity to speak with you. If you have any questions, we're here. Please come talk to us. We're happy to help you any way we can with your incident response plans.
Thanks, Steve.